The Labyrinth of Xyn'Zar, Jackson Hale's ordeal. Darkness. Infinite, suffocating darkness. Jackson Hale's senses stirred reluctantly, as though fighting against the oppressive void that clung to him. The first thing he became aware of was the cold. It seeped into his bones, a biting chill radiating from the metallic surface beneath him. The air was thick, almost syrupy, carrying a tang of copper mixed with the sterile sterility of processed oxygen. A faint, flickering light played at the edges of his closed eyelids, urging them to open. When he finally did, the sight that greeted him was unlike anything he had ever seen. The ceiling above was a latticework of shifting metal panels, pulsating softly as though alive. Patterns swirled across the surface, resembling veins pumping with an iridescent fluid. His head pounded as he tried to make sense of his surroundings. Jackson pushed himself up on trembling arms, his breath hitching as his eyes adjusted to the surreal environment. He was in a corridor, but it wasn't anything human-made. The walls on either side shimmered like liquid silver, occasionally bulging outward as though something unseen pressed against them from the other side. Tiny tendrils of vapor curled into the air where the metal met the floor, creating an otherworldly fog that clung to his boots. His body felt heavy, each movement labored as if gravity here was stronger than Earth's. Panic clawed at his mind as fragmented memories surfaced. The Silver Star, a small crew of 5, the cryosleep chambers. The mission to survey the abandoned orbital station in the Xyn'Zar system. They had been briefed on possible environmental hazards, unstable atmospheres, maybe a few rogue drones. Nothing had prepared him for this. Jackson's hand instinctively reached for his sidearm, but his holster was empty. His gear, gone. All he had were the standard-issue undersuit and a gnawing sense of vulnerability. "Damn it," he muttered under his breath, his voice hoarse and cracked. A distant sound cut through the silence. Low and rhythmic, it echoed faintly, almost like a heartbeat. It grew louder with each passing second, and Jackson's chest tightened with unease. He forced himself to stand, racing against the wall for support. The surface beneath his hand was warm, pulsing gently in time with the sound. It was as if the corridor itself was alive. The noise suddenly shifted, morphing into a guttural mechanical growl. Jackson turned sharply, his eyes locking onto a massive set of doors at the far end of the corridor. They were unlike any doors he had ever seen, their jagged edges resembling the fanged maw of some colossal beast. Slowly, they began to part, a blinding white light spilling out and casting long, distorted shadows across the walls. From the light emerged a figure. At first, it was just a silhouette, but as it approached, its features became clearer and more horrifying. It stood nearly 7 feet tall, its body unnervingly elongated and covered in a glossy, chitinous exoskeleton that seemed to absorb the light. Its face, or lack thereof, was a smooth, featureless void, save for 2 dark indentations where eyes should have been. The creature moved without a sound, gliding effortlessly across the floor. Jackson took a step back, his heartbeat hammering in his ears. The creature stopped a few meters away, tilting its head in an almost curious manner. A harsh, synthetic voice emanated from somewhere within its form. Scanning complete. Match identified. 89% compatibility with species Homo sapiens. Subject viability. Pending further analysis. The words sent a shiver down Jackson's spine. His mind raced, but there was no time to think. The creature raised one elongated arm, and from its hand extended a series of sharp, needle-like appendages that glinted menacingly in the light. "Wait," Jackson blurted, his voice cracking with desperation. But the creature didn't respond, its head tilting slightly as if analyzing his reaction. He stumbled backward, the living walls around him seeming to close in, their pulsations quickening in rhythm with his panic. The creature stepped closer, its appendages poised to strike. The creature lunged, its needle-like appendages slicing through the air with a high-pitched whistle. Jackson threw himself to the side, landing hard on the metallic floor. Pain shot through his shoulder as he scrambled to his feet, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The creature turned with eerie precision, gliding toward him again, its movements unnervingly smooth, as if it were floating just above the ground. Jackson's instincts kicked in. He bolted down the corridor, his boots slamming against the pulsating floor. The walls seemed to react to his presence, shifting and rippling as though they were alive, urging him forward, or perhaps guiding him into a trap. The low hum that permeated the space grew louder, resonating deep in his chest. It felt as though the entire structure was aware of him, watching, calculating. Behind him, the creature pursued relentlessly, its silent glide even more terrifying than any sound of footsteps. Jackson chanced a glance over his shoulder and saw it closing the distance, its faceless void locked onto him. He pushed himself harder, his lungs burning with the effort. The corridor had branched into 3 paths. Without slowing, Jackson veered left, hoping to lose the creature in the labyrinthine structure. The walls here were different, darker, more organic. Veins of glowing blue light pulsed through the metal, casting an eerie glow that illuminated his path. The air grew warmer, carrying a faint, acrid scent that made his eyes water. He rounded a corner and nearly collided with a jagged outcropping of metal that jutted from the wall like a serrated blade. Skidding to a stop, he noticed that the path ahead narrowed, forcing him to squeeze through a tight gap. Behind him, the creature's pursuit grew louder. It was faster than he anticipated. The gliding sound was now interspersed with sharp, metallic clicks, like talons scraping against the floor. Jackson forced himself through the narrow passage, the sharp edges tearing at his suit and scraping his skin. On the other side, he found himself in a vast chamber, its ceiling arsing high above him, disappearing into shadow. The floor was littered with strange objects, broken machinery, fragments of alien tech, and skeletal remains that were disturbingly human-like. He stumbled forward, his boots crunching on shattered glass and debris. The chamber was silent except for the faint hum of energy that seemed to emanate from the walls. In the center of the room stood a massive console, its surface covered in intricate symbols and glowing panels. Jackson's heart leaped. If he could figure out how to use it, perhaps he could find a way to escape, or at least understand where he was. Rushing to the console, he placed his hands on the surface. The metal was warm to the touch, and the symbols shifted under his fingers, rearranging themselves into patterns that felt vaguely familiar. He pressed one of the glowing panels, and the entire room came alive. Lights flared to life, and the hum of energy intensified. A holographic display burst into existence above the console, showing a 3-dimensional map of what appeared to be the structure he was in. Jackson scanned the map, his eyes darting across its intricate layout. The structure was massive, a sprawling labyrinth of corridors, chambers, and towering spires. At its center was a glowing beacon labeled Core Access. Before he could process the implications, a harsh screech tore through the air. He turned to see the creature entering the chamber, its elongated body silhouetted against the corridor's glowing blue light. It paused for a moment, its featureless face tilting as if surveying the room. Then it moved toward him with terrifying speed. Jackson's eyes locked onto a cylindrical object lying among the debris, a weapon, or at least something resembling one. He dove for it, his fingers closing around the cold, metallic surface. The object hummed to life in his hands, emitting a faint blue glow. Without thinking, he turned and pointed it at the creature, pressing what he assumed was the trigger. A burst of energy erupted from the device, striking the creature square in the chest. It staggered, a guttural, mechanical growl emanating from deep within its form. Jackson didn't wait to see if the shot had incapacitated it. He turned and sprinted toward the far end of the chamber, where another corridor awaited. The creature shrieked, the sound reverberating through the chamber like a physical force. Jackson glanced back and saw it recovering, its movements now erratic and jerky, but no less determined. It was hurt, but far from defeated. As he plunged into the next corridor, The walls around him began to shift violently, as if reacting to the energy blast. The structure seemed to come alive, its metallic surfaces writhing and morphing, cutting off paths and creating new ones. Jackson realized with a sinking feeling that the labyrinth was changing, adapting, and that escape was going to be far more complicated than he had imagined. The corridor twisted and shifted like a living organism, its walls bending and contracting as though they were breathing. Jackson stumbled forward, clutching the glowing weapon tightly. His legs burned, and his lungs felt like they were about to collapse, but he didn't dare slow down. The creature's distorted shrieks echoed behind him, growing louder and more erratic. Ahead, the corridor opened into another chamber. This one was smaller than the last, but no less eerie. Strange, translucent pods lined the walls, filled with a viscous, greenish fluid. Inside each pod floated humanoid figures, some grotesquely malformed, others eerily pristine. Their eyes were closed, and their bodies twitched occasionally as if caught in a nightmare. The sight sent a chill down Jackson's spine. "What the hell is this place?" he muttered, his voice barely audible over the rhythmic pulsations of the walls. He didn't linger to investigate. The creature was still behind him, and the labyrinth was closing in. At the far end of the chamber, a circular door stood ajar, its edges glowing faintly with the same blue light as the veins in the walls. Jackson rushed toward it, the weapon in his hand thrumming softly as if reacting to his urgency. He slipped through the door and found himself in another corridor, but this one felt different, more purposeful. The pulsations in the walls were synchronized here, like a heartbeat, and the air was heavier, charged with static. The map he had seen earlier flashed in his mind. The core access point was close. If he could reach it, maybe he could find answers, or a way out. He pressed forward, his steps quick but cautious. The corridor branched again, but this time, the walls seemed to guide him, glowing brighter in one direction and dimming in another. He followed the brighter path, his instincts screaming at him that he was being herded. But what choice did he have? The creature was relentless, and staying put meant certain death. The corridor ended abruptly, opening into a cavernous chamber unlike anything Jackson had encountered so far. In the center stood a massive, pulsating structure that seemed to defy logic. It was a monolith of metal and organic material, its surface covered in intricate patterns that shifted and changed as he watched. Tendrils of light snaked out from its base, connecting to the walls, floor, and ceiling. The entire chamber throbbed with energy, and Jackson could feel the vibrations in his bones. He approached cautiously, the weapon raised. As he neared the structure, a voice filled the chamber, not a sound, but a presence in his mind. It was deep, resonant, and impossibly ancient. "Welcome, observer. You are the first in 12,391 cycles to reach the core." Jackson froze, his grip tightening on the weapon. What is this place? Who are you?" he demanded, his voice trembling. The voice didn't answer directly. Instead, images flooded his mind. Planets consumed by fire, stars collapsing into darkness, and civilizations rising and falling in the blink of an eye. The scale of it was overwhelming, and Jackson staggered under the weight of the visions. "This is Xyn'Zar. I am its custodian, its memory, its judge. You have been chosen for evaluation." "Evaluation?" Jackson repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. "What do you mean? I didn't choose this. Choice is an illusion. You are here because you must be. Your actions will determine the fate of this vessel and its legacy." Before Jackson could respond, the chamber shook violently. The creature had arrived. It burst into the room, its movements more erratic than ever. Sparks flew from its damaged body, and its mechanical growls were laced with what sounded almost like pain. The core's voice returned, colder now. "Interloper detected. Threat level significant. Observer, you must act." Jackson turned to face the creature, the weapon in his hands vibrating with increasing intensity. The tendrils of light from the core began to shift, converging toward the weapon as if feeding it power. The creature screeched, its faceless void locked onto Jackson. This was it. Fight or die. He raised the weapon and braced himself. The weapon in Jackson's hands thrummed violently, its glow intensifying until it was almost blinding. The tendrils of light from the core fed into it, merging technology and energy into something far beyond his understanding. The creature, now a mass of erratic, sparking movements, lunged forward with a guttural roar. Its appendages extended, gleaming with razor-sharp precision. Jackson squeezed the trigger. A shockwave of energy erupted from the weapon, the blast so intense it sent him stumbling backward. The chamber filled with a deafening hum as the energy tore through the air, striking the creature dead center. For a moment, everything was silent. Then the creature exploded in a blinding cascade of light and shards, its form disintegrating into nothingness. Jackson collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath. The weapon fell from his hands, now cold and inert. The chamber dimmed, the pulsating tendrils of light retracting back into the core. A heavy silence settled over the room, broken only by the steady hum of the core itself. "Well done, observer," the voice resonated in his mind. "The threat has been neutralized. You have proven yourself capable of wielding the legacy of Xyn'Zar." Jackson forced himself to his feet, his body trembling with exhaustion. "What is this place?" he demanded. "Why am I here?" The core responded, its tone shifting to something almost reverent. Xyn'Zar is not merely a vessel. It is a repository of knowledge, a sanctuary for those who seek to transcend. Long ago, its creators entrusted me to safeguard its purpose. Only those deemed worthy may claim its secrets. "Worthy? Of what?" Jackson's voice cracked with frustration. "I didn't ask for this." The core seemed to hesitate, as if weighing his words. "Worthy of survival, worthy of knowledge, worthy of shaping the future." The galaxy teeters on the brink of chaos. Xyn'Zar was designed as a solution, a beacon of unity and power, but it cannot fall into the wrong hands. Jackson staggered toward the console at the base of the core, his eyes scanning the shifting patterns. What happens now? A series of symbols flashed across the console, rearranging into something Jackson could finally understand. It was a choice, a path forward. One option would merge him with Xyn'Zar, granting him access to its vast repository of knowledge and control over its systems. The other would allow him to leave, returning him to his ship with no memory of what had transpired here. Choose, observer. Your decision will shape the fate of not only yourself but countless others. Jackson's mind raced. The weight of the decision was crushing. The power to change the galaxy was within his grasp, but at what cost? To become one with Xyn'Zar meant losing his humanity, his identity. To walk away meant abandoning the potential to do immeasurable good or harm. His voice faltered, and he closed his eyes, trying to steady his thoughts. The memories of the visions, burning planets, collapsing stars, flashed in his mind. Could he bear the burden of such responsibility? Did he even have a choice? The core pulsed gently, as if sensing his turmoil. Time is irrelevant here, observer, but indecision breeds stagnation. Choose. Jackson opened his eyes, his resolve hardening. His hand reached out, trembling, and pressed against the console. The chamber erupted in light as the core responded to his decision, its energy engulfing him completely. When Jackson woke, he was alone. The chamber was silent, the core dark and lifeless. The weapon lay at his side, inert. A faint trail of light guided him back through the labyrinth, now eerily still. As he stepped aboard the Silver Star, his mind was blank, his memories a fragmented haze. Behind him, the orbital station of Xyn'Zar flickered once, then disappeared, leaving no trace of its existence.